Oh, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to be able to share with you a topic that is deeply passionate for me. I believe that we are in a time when we're seeing a profound transformation of the history of medicine. As telescope had revolutionized astronomy and microscope transformed biology, I believe that artificial intelligence is really enabling us to reimagine how we deliver, develop, and transform life-saving treatments. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through the challenges that we face and into the possibility that AI is going to be opening up for us. So when we talk about transforming medicine, we're not talking about some abstract idea or some academic exercise. We are talking about addressing one of humanity's greatest burden, the weight of disease that touch every family, every community, every nation across the earth. So let me share with you some sobering facts of our human condition that drives everything we do. And behind every statistic, we should remember there's a human story, whether it be a grandmother struggling with diabetes, a child facing rare genetic disease, or a parent desperately seeking hope when conventional treatment failed them. More than 1 billion people, nearly 1 in 6 people on this planet live with significant disability. Families are devastated by conditions that should be preventable, treatable, maybe even curable with the right intervention. And the economic impact is even more overwhelming. In 2023, almost $5 trillion is spent in the US on healthcare. And to put that into perspective, that's almost 6 times the nation spent on defense, and it's almost 18% of the US GDP. So we're not talking about just expensive treatment for acute condition. We're talking about chronic disease that is long, potentially complex, and evolving, and requiring ongoing management of the patient for his entire lifetime. And that chronic disease accounts for 75% of that cost. So that's very sobering. The other thing that's also very sobering is that we have identified more than 10,000 distinct diseases, but there's only approved treatment for about 500 of those. That's a 95% gap. There are over 400 million people suffering from rare disease alone with no approved therapy to support them. So let's step back and see how medicine have evolved to show us both how far we came and how much more we need to go. Historically, medicine have been mostly around surgery. Basically, if something goes wrong, you remove it. But then in 2001, everything changed with the arrival of Gleevec. That's the first targeted cancer therapy. So instead of cutting out the disease, we were able to target very precisely at the molecular level. And Gleevec demonstrates for us that we can design medicine that can attack the cancer cell while leaving most of the healthy tissue alone. A precision that wasn't available decades before, and changes the medicine. So today, pharmaceutical company has been making tremendous progress since that time. This chart shows the dramatic growth in the medicine usage worldwide. We're treating more patients in more locality with more sophisticated therapy than ever before. Total pharma investment have grown from approximately $80 billion in 2018 to almost $100 billion today. And at Novartis alone, we're reaching over 296 million patients across the globe. But despite of this increased investment and reach, we're still realizing a productivity loss. So let me show you consequences of this. So despite of all the investment, which is immense, we are not necessarily seeing an increase in the productivity. So back in 1998, the cost of making a new drug is about $179 million. Today is closer to $2.5 billion. And that's about 15-fold increase. And now on the average time is 10 to 15 years to arrive to a new medicine. And the truth is, on the average, we are successful 1 out of 10 clinical trials that we conduct. So the odds are, so despite of how much money we've been putting in, how much investment, how smart we've been using that money, really, productivity is still being in decline. So I believe that this is one of the most challenging scientific endeavor for human, this idea of working for discovering disease. So I want to walk you through what are some of the challenges that's in the way of our ability to discover drug more effectively, in order to get you to understand how AI might be useful. We'll start with the complexity of the human biology. So on the left is a diagram that captures part of the protein-protein interaction that we know in biology. They're estimated to be about 640,000 protein-protein interaction. And each one of those connections, or each one of those dots, are the place where we can potentially apply a drug to intervene and affect the disease. But we also understand that where we intervene, there are likely to be cascading effects off the relating network. And that's hard to control, some of which then become an adverse effect, things that we are not yet know how to predict. But even if we could map every biological interaction, we will still be faced with a second challenge. On the left here is what a drug might look like. It is an intricate molecular structure that fits perfectly into the biological target. And here's a number that's humbling to any scientist. There are over 10 to the 60 combination to a possible drug molecule. Just to put it in the right perspective, that is about twice the number of stars in the estimated for what we can see in the universe. So how do you search a space that's bigger than the universe for a handful of molecules? So even when you find that those promising molecule, we encounter a third challenge. And that is where disease might look the same at maybe a physician's office, maybe as we diagnose it, but when you look closely at the cellular level or the molecular level, they can be very different. On the left are subtypes of cancer that we can encounter. And some of those subtypes require different treatments. On the right is a genetic heat map of a set of patients who were diagnosed with very similar diagnosis, in fact, the same diagnosis, but they show underlying differences. And a patient could be different because of their genetic background, because of the medical history, what medicine they've taken in the past, the environment, how they grew up, and even the way the bodies process the medicine. So on average, a drug that we make usually only effective for less than 50% of the intended population. So this is the challenges we face, but it's also where we believe that AI can really make a difference. We expect that there's an estimate, and those are probably not quite right, but they're expected that 30% of the drug will be made by AI in 2028. I think that may be a little optimistic, but we're definitely witnessing how AI is evolving the way we work. So not only is it augmenting, I think AI in some, and I'll go into this, where some aspect of its capabilities suppress the way human can actually work. So let's take a look at how AI is addressing each of those fundamental challenges, starting with the information overload problem. So there are every day 3,000 new biomedical papers are published. That's over 1 million papers per year. No human researcher or teams of researchers will be able to keep up with that exponential growth of information. At Novartis, we are developing system, we're deploying system that allow us to search for those research data, historical understanding, whether it be in PDFs or Excel table or handwritten notes, even in some cases, in matter of minutes to bring out relevant information rather than months. But we have also realized that not only is AI able to read faster, it's able to see patterns in ways that we are not able to pick up. So AI can map patterns across thousands of dimensions simultaneously and find differences that our eye won't be able to detect. Most of our eyes, most humans are working with 3 or 4 dimensions at one time. But sometimes the differences can only come up when it is in hundreds or thousands of dimensions. So this is where AI has been really powerful in finding patterns. To the left is just an example of handwritten letters, numbers that AI is able to distinguish. But it's not only recognizing it, but able to find relationship and context for them. A lot of times we actually miss signals that AI can pick up that we would miss if we were just applying more traditional statistical analysis. But it's not just about patterns. It can now become almost an ultimate assistant in a lab. And this is not tools that are based on pre-programmed instruction, but rather intelligent system that can analyze the situation, plan to how to solve the problem, recruit AI agent as needed, use tools, interpret the results and report it back, and also learn and adapt to new situations. We are trying to incorporate a lot of this tool into the way we work, such as that of the workflow of a medicinal chemist, and in order to help them make decisions faster and much more precisely and repetitively. So they can automate sample analysis, sort samples, sample preparations, and definitely reduce time and error. But even more interesting than that, what if you can look at AI as a way to digitally represent the biological world? So when you have a new idea, a new drug to test, rather than testing in human or animal first, you test on a digital representation of the biological system. This allows you then to basically manage multiple parallel analysis, as well as test it without having to take the most costly and potentially creating risk for patient. This is what we call digital twins, is where we simulate the biological process and able to generate predict results. This is still very early, and we're still working on a lot of this, and the industry as a whole, the academic world as a whole, are working on some of this. But we have already seen evidence of how this can accelerate the way we do clinical trials, to do experimental testing, finding targets, and so forth. Sorry, this has gone out of sync. That's why I'm looking at this. It's kind of confusing me. So a question that always seems to come up, and that is, where is human still relevant? Not only relevant, maybe even superior to AI. And I think the way I look at it is, if you can think of like a conductor of a concert, she directs the musician to focus on certain aspect of how they play in order to sort of bring out that emotional tone, to be able to convert what it would be just mere mechanical movement to something more meaningful. And I think AI and human working with AI in the drug discovery space, this is exactly what's happening. So we need to understand the different way the intelligence is at play. So I'm gonna go a little bit into where AI is strong and where it runs in a fundamental wall, where I think human is almost irreplaceable. To begin with, as I've kind of alluded to earlier, AI has this strong inductive ability, which is about learning from the past, learning from a pattern, and then be able to predict based on new example. So this is an example of AlphaFold, a AI system that does exactly that. It takes this very massive data set of protein and find at high dimensional similarities and difference between them, and then predict the structure of an entirely new protein. It is, in fact, is being used to map over 200 million protein today, which is roughly probably all the estimated knowledge of protein that we know. So it was really powerful. But it's not just about finding patterns, as we mentioned, but it's also this sort of deductive capability that exists with AI, this ability to follow logical rule with unwavering consistency. Unlike human, where we might get into, can get tired, or can get distracted, or maybe can get unconsciously biased on certain things, AI can follow instruction, execute very complex protocol again and again without introducing error. Something that is challenging for human, even with some of the more experienced scientists. So that part is important because there are a lot of this aspect where we could use this capability to scale and to optimize the process we have. But it's usually about process that we already know how to do. So I think that actually points out some of the weaknesses of AI. And that is the ability to take an unexpected situation that might involve data that are ambiguous, that might be missing, or that actually contradict with each other. Those are challenging situations for AI, but humans have this capability of going through that chaos and create creative leap in thinking. So the Petri dish is to remind me how Fleming have discovered penicillin. And it's in that sense that he recognized something that is unexpected and then create this creative leap of idea of what is happening and then testing what is happening. And it's those creative leap that is responsible for things like penicillin, Viagra, X-ray, insulin. It wasn't something that we already knew about. So I think the human part of this is being able to leverage what is in our intuition, our ability to understand sort of what is really needed, the empathy to what the patient is really needed, and be able to then come up with a creative solution. Charting into areas that has not charted before. So I don't think the question now is whether AI will transform medicine. It already is happening. I think the question for us really is about whether we shape that transformation or do we react to it. Because AI does bring risks, as we know. The training data itself can bring bias into the model. And we probably will be familiar with how some of our historical action might not be the action we want to do today, but yet in part of that data, it will drive the model to be different. And then there's AI's tendency to tell misinformation as with a lot of confidence, what we call hallucination. And because the AI model, in fact, is usually very large and what we call black box, we don't really precisely how it works. So it really challenges the ability to trust the prediction. But what we have is agency to make a difference here, not to just sort of take it as is. What we can do is form equitable AI policy. We can develop skills that complement that of the AI system, as we pointed out before. And most importantly, to add value into the model that reflects us, the human part of it. And that includes equity, dignity, compassion, and use those as a way to train this model, build into the model. What a lot of the researchers call human alignment, and have those human value as a North Star for this transformation. So what does this future look like that we're moving towards having drug discovery measured in days and weeks and not decades. I think this opens a possibility that we've never had before. Imagine a world where disease are defeated before symptoms appear, or where no child die from a preventable disease, or where life-saving medicine become globally available, not just for the wealthy, but to everyone who needs them. I think this future belongs to a thoughtful partnership between human artificial intelligence working together for one goal, alleviating suffering, extending healthy life for everybody. So for me, this is part of our sort of requirement, a part of our calling, which is to use this powerful tool toward our highest human aspiration. So thank you for listening.